will call it to order. Start with the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We need a motion to approve the minutes. No.
Consent agenda.
Sorry, consent agenda. My bad.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, audience delegations.
We did not have anyone sign up.
All right, and student recognition.
Oh, I forgot to warn you. Can you play those videos on there?
I saw that look, Kathy. You can't hide that behind the mask.
I think she just stuck her tongue out
She's under the bus.
and nobody could see.
Hello, my name is George Fries and I'm a student of the month for September. I'm a section leader in band, I am in NHS, I'm in NTHS, I am the academic club captain, I'm the chapter vice president for FFA, I'm in our high school cross country team, I am in Kathy's, I've also been in the Youth Symphony of Kansas City, I'm the science club president, and I'm the traction vice president. My parents are Carl and Laura Fries. And the most influential person in my school career has probably been Mr. Dekoff, because both his and Mr. Strutt's support through the ag program and in the rest of my academic career has been immense. They've really supported independent projects as well as a lot of my school related projects, and it's just been a really big help. And an embarrassing story from high school is when me and a few of my friends were in chemistry to make up a lab that we had missed, and we were not wearing proper lab wear, and so we had a little costume party with some of the old dance team clothes from Miss Roney's room. And in 5 years, I'll probably be making the transition from undergrad to graduate school, because I hope to be earning my master's in botany and genetics for genetic engineering in botany and microbiology with an emphasis on pharmacology. And my favorite elementary teacher was Mrs. Brown, because she always kept animals in her room and she was always really supportive of my love of science, and she really just encouraged me to work my hardest and do my best in school and in life.
Hi, I'm Colleen O'Reilly. I'm Student of the Month, and I am involved in Student Council as the president, in STAD as the secretary, in Key Club as the vice president, and I'm just regularly involved in Science Club, College Advisors, NHS, Wellness Committee, and YMCA Youth in Government. I am the daughter of Mike and Lori O'Reilly, and I have a twin sister who I beat out for Student of the Month this month, so love you, Mary. Okay, so the most influential person to my school career is Mr. Culpepper, because he inspired me to become a political science major through his class and his approach to American politics, government. My funniest or most embarrassing high school memory is when I went to see Rashomon with Audrey and Isaiah and Sydney, and Audrey ran over a curb on the way out of Dairy Queen. That was funny. And then watching the kissing booth with Mary and Isaiah and Audrey. That was funny too. 5 years from now, I see myself still pursuing higher education in political science. Hopefully I'll be working in policy by that time, and hopefully have a good internship under my belt. Maybe I'll be in DC. That would be good. My favorite middle school teachers are Mr. Todd, Miss Coram, Miss Fries, and Mr. Culpepper, because they made class amazing and fun, through food for Mr. Todd. Miss Freeze actually made me like science. Miss Coram explained things well, and Mr. Culpepper just put up with me and made history something that was actually interesting.
Hey guys, I'm Trevor Campbell. I'm a senior at Harrisonville High School. I'm involved in FFA. I'm the president of our chapter in Harrisonville, and then I'm also the area parliamentarian. I'm involved in football. I'm a captain this year. I'm involved in wrestling, NHS, and NTHS. Two people who have had a big impact on my high school career are my parents, Jim Campbell and Becky Campbell, who are both teachers in our district. But they've really helped me show me how hard I need to work to get good grades, and they've kept me accountable and never give up on any sports or any goals that I've set for myself, and have always helped me achieve them. Another person who's influenced me a lot in high school has been Coach Vinny. He's always been my life coach, who's always helped me get through some hard times or whatever I'm going through. He's always been there to help me out and keep me going. In 5 years, I probably see myself being rich somewhere, hopefully having a lot of money, a bunch of land, hopefully some cows with my brother, a big farm, and hopefully have a really good looking wife and maybe a kid or two in 5 years. I don't know. We'll see. My favorite elementary school teacher was Miss Meeks. I had her for 4th and 5th grade. We looped, and it was a ton of fun. I mean, we were field day champs, I think, back-to-back years. It was a lot of fun. She helped me. She kept me reading even when I hated reading, and kept forcing me to read more and more books. In middle school, Miss Thomas also forced me to read, and I think looking back, that was good. And they were very good teachers. A lot of fun. And a funny / embarrassing high school story for my high school is probably, I think it was my sophomore year when we were weighing in for wrestling. Right before a duel, Jamie Gray had a big hole in his underwear and did not bother to change. And when he went up to weigh in for weigh-ins, the ref told him about it, and he just acted like he had no clue that he had probably a 10-inch hole in the back of his underwear. So that's probably the funniest high school story I have.
Hi, I am Sayla Norman, and I'm a senior at Harrisonville. I am involved in NHS. I'm the secretary. I am a band captain. I'm in jazz band. I play the bass. And I am also in an AV team. The most influential person to my school career has been my parents, Amanda and Michael Norman. They've just really shown me how to put in the hard work and create that balance of having fun and working, you know. A funny high school story, I'm gonna call you out, Mr. Cole, is when I was learning how to create graphics for the Jumbotron, at football and soccer games. And we were messing around creating a graphic, and we put happy 72nd birthday, Mr. Cole. And we didn't actually put it live on the Jumbotron. But Mr. Cole came over and clicked the button on accident to make it live, and lots of people kept coming up to him happy birthday, Mr. Cole, and well, he's definitely not 72. He's older than that, so. 5 years from now, I hope to have graduated college, have a nursing degree, maybe have a flute studio, be a millionaire, have a bunch of cool cars, a nice house, you know. My favorite elementary school teacher was probably Mrs. Brown. She taught me in 5th grade, and she had just a bunch of cool animals. She had a snake, a frog, turtle, and she was just such a nice lady and just a really nice person to be around and to learn from.
All gonna be millionaires.
It's funny how what they want to be in 5 years and what we want to be in 5 years is very, very different. Okay. Moving on to our partner organization, Mr. Kirkmo.
Sure. I would love to help you out.
We come bearing gifts.
Boy.
Thank you. Those are soft.
You matched your collection.
Thank you.
Bright green.
Thank you.
At night, wearing it.
Those are easy to get a hold of. and take.
Well, I wasn't going to
Thank
say
you.
that.
Thank you. Good deal.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you once again. This is always fun each year. I'm here to represent Bright Futures, which is a community-sponsored group that seeks to bridge the gap that sometimes happens in our children's lives. They have needs that many of you help foster and meet through the school district. There's also a lot of needs that cannot be met simply by board decisions or by teachers' love. And so we at Bright Futures strongly believe that every community has all the resources it needs to help children grow up to be strong citizens and people who give back to their community. And so Bright Futures is the attempt to make a bridge between all those different agencies and nonprofits and parents groups and teachers and school boards alike. And so we attempt to do that. As you see on the handout, we have a framework that we work by, and it is that framework you'll see on the right side of capacity building by pooling all these resources we have in the community and in the school. And on the left, you'll see that we come full circle. And we don't just try to invest in the kids' lives, just invest in the kids' lives, but we try to do that and model for them what it means for them to give back as well. And so we've had in the past year several great examples of ways in which our schools and groups have sought to teach kids how to be good citizens already while they're still in school, how to learn about needs in the community and what they can do to help meet them. And so Bright Futures is not just about helping the poor, it's not just about helping the needy, but it's also about helping those who are well off to teach them as well what it means to be a good citizen. And we all know that our fortune could change at any moment, and so our attempt is to help all children at all times. You'll see on the bottom of that first page there are three main foci, strategic goals that we have here as a local Bright Futures. One is to provide my buddy opportunities in every school. This is our attempt to try to match up mentors with kids who need mentors in their lives. And as you know, that has been a big struggle this year. We're not able to actually do that, but we're trying to hook up some teachers to give some special attention to some kids in need. Secondly, to create a community education strategy. I'm sure, as you all know, once you train a group on what they need to know, new people come into the group and people leave the group. And so we learned early on that teaching the community about the needs that our kids have, as well as the opportunities we have as Bright Futures to help them, is a continual process. And so we are always trying to educate ourselves, our schools, our teachers, and our community about how they can help make this even better community. And finally, we are trying to develop a plan to expose all students and staff to the concept of service learning. Again, this is giving back. This is learning how to be a good citizen now. It's learning about how to invest yourself in your fellow students and your teachers and your community around you. On the back of this page, I won't go over all the numbers, but it's just a summary for you of what this past year's looked like. Different ways that we have done that, with whether it's handing out food, handing out clothes, things like that you can look over, and hopefully you'll keep the sheet by you throughout this year just to be reminded of some of the needs our kids have, as I'm sure you're well aware of. I thought I was well aware of it until about 6 weeks ago. I started subbing in the district. I was in between jobs there for a little bit, and so to get myself out of the house a little bit, I became a substitute. And wow, that was really a life-changing experience. It's one thing to come alongside the kids and help them in the special activities, but I had the opportunity in a couple different situations to sub for a class for an entire week. And so I got to know the kids pretty well and just became even more burdened for what some of them are going through. They are just exposed to things that no one should be exposed at such a young age. And makes me more impressed with our teachers. Had incredible experiences with our school staff. Our administration is just wonderful as well. So it's just really insightful and good for me, who I think I've done a pretty good job the last 10 years or so, trying to engage with our kids in our schools. But subbing takes it to a whole deeper level, and so I have a newfound respect for our teachers, which is good because I'm married to one, and our administration as well. So I want to end by publicly thanking Jill Filer and Jennifer Beavers for the incredible work they do, and to thank you all for making part of their job descriptions helping with Bright Futures. We could not accomplish a tenth of what we do without their expertise. Jason Eggers is also an incredible help. He sits with us on our advisory board and is an incredible liaison for us as community members to have access to the school administration and district. And thank you, Jason, Jennifer, and Jill for the incredible help that you give. We can't say enough how much we appreciate that as community members to partner with you all. All right. Any questions? Otherwise, I'm sure you have really exciting business to get to. So thank you for your time and your continued support.
Thank you, Bill, very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Donation acknowledgement.
So we'd like to report to the board the receipt of an approximately 4-year-old HP Pavilion G7 laptop to the district to be used however needed from Joyce Spangler, a former resident. She had the computer wiped clean prior to donation, so we're extremely grateful for her generous donation. I'd also like to recognize Mr. John Coffey, who donated his facility at the Bowl Activity Center for our middle school students to use. It was a great partnership, and greatly appreciate that help for our staff and students.
Monthly information items. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on to the audit report.
Let's see. Can you make that big? Okay. All right. Good evening. My name is Diana Klosterman, and I'm here on behalf of Mandy Coolin. She was the lead on your audit this year. I assisted with that audit, but she directed the path of the audit, determined the scope of the audit, and assigned out our related duties. I have audited here at the district off and on for the past several years. I've worked with Kathy, and we've learned to work very well together, and I think Kathy intuits what we're going to need sometimes, which is very helpful. It allows us to be efficient while we're auditing and be able to give the most for your buck as far as the audit is concerned. I'm with Westbrook & Company. We're located in Richmond. We're at about 42 audits as of now. And we've taken on a new role, and that is to help school districts when they're transitioning accountants or bookkeepers or business office personnel, and we go out and step in and fill that role as an interim CFO, if you will, until they find the perfect match for their district. And it's helped us a lot, especially on a year like this where you have all the new codes, all the new revenue streams. We can be intuitive on that, which is helpful when we're out auditing as well. And so just to let you know, we are right in the trenches with you, dealing with the coding and the grabbing of expenditures and using them in the best way. There's an optimal way you use your expenditures to get the best reimbursement, sometimes even a double reimbursement when you're looking at Medicaid and some of those other things. So if you ever need us throughout the year, be sure and contact us. We're here all year, not just during your audit. But this evening I'm going to quickly go through your audit. I guess I'll start right here. Our auditor report, and the report's going to change next year. The new standards were pushed back a year, but our opinion will be at the very top of the first page, which I like a lot better. Right now it's at the second page of your report, and what it indicates there is that your financial statements were materially correct. And that's the report you want sitting on front of your financial statements presented to your readers. And we made no journal entries. Those financial statements that you relied upon all year long are the same financial statements you're looking at right now. Now, behind the table of contents from pages 3 all the way back to page 10 or 10 is the management discussion and analysis. It's one of my favorite parts of the financial statements because it's actually a message from management explaining the year, what happened in the year, how the fund balance has changed, and what you have planned going forth. So I do encourage you to have a look at those. However, we're going to jump on to page 13. So page 13 is your statement of activities, and when I prepare for these board meetings, I like to look at the previous year, see where you came from, and that's why that management discussion and analysis is very handy. When I look at your statement of activities, I go down through those activities on the left-hand side and compare them to the previous year. We know that it was a lot different this year. You had an early shutdown, your transportation costs changed, your food service costs changed, even your instruction costs changed. So there was a lot of changes across the board. The big thing the district did this year is pay down on your 2014 bond. And so you have a big principal retirement, the third row from the bottom there, $2.8 million. Even with that big principal retirement, overall, your expenditures only increased by $250,000 because of the decreases in the other areas. This is your balance sheet. It's quite simple because it's cash basis. So to see what it's all about, we're going to go back to a footnote back on page 26 so we can see where your balances are and what you can use them for. And when we look at that, your general fund has $5.2 million in it, but you're only able to spend 4.6 of that on the day-to-day bills. The rest of that money is pigeonholed somewhere. Student activities at $429,000, food service at $289,000. You've got to use that money in that area. Then your special revenue fund, it's got a little balance in there. Debt service at $2.2 million is restricted for just debt service. You can't use it for anything else. And then over there in Fund 4, your capital projects fund, you see there you've got $46,360. That can only be used for capital projects by the very fact that it's sitting in your capital project fund. If you look at the management discussion analysis, there can be a note in there talking about the fact that you delayed some of your construction. So I imagine that's probably happening this year. All right. On page 15 is your revenues and expenditures listed by fund. Your 4 funds across the top. We talked about your expenditures a little bit. Revenues we'll look at in a graph. So let's look to the bottom there, the change in your fund balances. And you can see the general fund decreased by $747,000. But note that you had a big transfer over to Fund 2 to cover your teachers' salaries, and you had a $150,000 transfer over to Fund 4. Still only a $747,000 decrease in Fund 1. Your footnotes. So when we look at your footnotes, those are all the things that explain line items on your financial statements. And so we have your debt footnote, which talks about those borrowings that you have outstanding. I like to just go over to the amortization schedule. And with your current bond load, you have a payoff at the end of 2027, although we know you've issued a new GO bond coming up. And then your other types of debt, lease participation certificates, equipment leases, those are laid out here as well. And you can see your direct borrowing there is going to pay off in 2027. Your lease participation certificates are looking at 2030. All right, let's look at those graphs for just a moment. And so I can see them, I'm going to grab one up close. So that first graph is your revenues. And what we do is we compare 5 years. And you can see there that your local revenues are up when compared to the previous year a bit. And you can see that increase on the bar chart. We'll always see an adverse relationship, so you can see your state revenues are down. One goes up, the other one goes down, based on the formula. And we have years and years. If y'all ever want to see 20 years, we probably have that in our database. And then this is your expenditure graph. This one had a big change as well. Y'all outsourced your food service, so you see here that your salaries and employee benefits as a whole of the pie dropped from 75% to 69%. I just want to let you know that's not because you decreased salaries. You outsourced your food service. So all that food service salaries went out, and that's increased your purchase services. That's the reason your purchase services went from 14% of the pie to 22%. And you can also see capital outlay is a tiny little percentage. So even though it dropped quite a little bit from the previous year, the part of the whole didn't make that big of a difference in your pie there. This is your statistics that we like to look at from year to year. You know, we're always talking about the reserve ratio, the ability to pay your bills until the property taxes come in. And you can see that your reserve ratio is at 20.44%. As the management discussion and analysis says, your district's goal is to have your reserves between 20 and 25%. So you're right there at that cusp of being within your goal. And then we look at your average daily attendance. Everybody's changed up a lot because of the fact that school shut down early, so you're going to see that drop there in that one. While we're out doing your audit, we're also looking at your compliance with Missouri laws and regulations. That's reporting of attendance, transportation, free and reduced, how you spend your money through purchasing and bidding. We did not see any non-compliance that was material in relation to those compliance with those areas. We had a couple of things just to point out. We had you change a little item on your transportation. It was immaterial. And then on your budget, when you all made the decision to pay on your principal, I don't believe you probably budgeted for that payoff, right? When we plan your audit, we look at the risky areas and determine where we're going to point our efforts. When we're doing that, we're looking at your internal controls. And so while we don't give you an opinion on your internal controls, if we see something that we want to point out to you, we share that in your financial statements. And I'll touch on that paragraph in just a moment. We audited your federal programs this year. We did 2 programs this year, food service and special education. We saw compliance with the 14 compliance requirements associated with spending those funds, so no findings there. All right, so what we talk about is segregation of duties. You all have had this comment in your audit for several years. That's just the separation of duties amongst a number of people to safeguard the assets of the district. Right now, Kathy's the system administrator. Y'all just changed software this year. In the year of change, it's important to have everything available so you can set it up properly. But you're going to want to look at really limiting your permissions as you get new people in to only have the permissions to the jobs that they need to do, nothing more. And so we're recommending that you look at your segregation of duties and make the necessary strengthening moves that you need to do through permissions and spreading the job out. Okay, outside of this report or this booklet, we have a stapled document. And it's the required communications. We used to have the required communications and then a management discussion and analysis, and we've combined those into one. We think it's more readable, and that way you're not having to look at a bunch of different documents. In here we talk about how the audit went, whether or not we had any undue influence or any issues. We did not. We had a very good and workable working relationship, and got in and out on our audit with ease. On the second page, though, we talk about purchasing documents. So you'll recall that when I talked about this compliance with state statute, I talked about the requirements as far as purchasing and bid compliance. So we test your expenditures out of Fund 4 to make sure you're in compliance with state statute and the board policy. We didn't see any non-compliance, but we did see that the documentation to prove compliance had to be retrieved from the department that initiated that purchase. So our recommendation here is just get that documentation with the invoice so anybody looking at that expenditure can easily see that you complied with all the requirements associated with that expenditure. So that's it. As far as recommendations, segregation of duties, give that a hard look as you transition personnel, and then just strengthen your controls over your purchasing documentation so it's easily located in one place. We looked out to your website to make sure you're in compliance with the state statute as far as making your expenditures readable and searchable on your website. We found that to be just fine. You're ahead of the game, and that is good. Overall, financial statements looked good, clean. We didn't see any issues. We test a lot. We didn't see any issues with credit card charges, employee reimbursements, coding, or any of that. So it was a really good audit outcome. Is there any questions?
I don't think so.
Well, we thank you for your business, and again, reach out to us if you need anything at all throughout the year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We need a motion on that.
Oh, that's right. We need a motion.
I move to approve the 2019-20 audit as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Assessment and evaluation of district programs.
We're reporting on September, which is the first month, of course, that we paid teacher salaries. So everything looks pretty standard for us in the month of September. Regarding revenues, we got $116,000 from Cass County. Those were the county CARES Act dollars that we're getting reimbursed. We submit a claim with the expenditures that we did and get those back pretty quickly. We also got a small refund from the Division of Unemployment. They paid us back 50% of the claims those first few months when we had so many folks claiming. So we got about $8,700 back from that. So that was a nice little surprise. Ending projected fund balance is 18.57%, and total cash is $17.3 million. Of course, $11.6 million are the bond proceeds.
All right. Any questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy. Cass County Kids First legislative priorities.
Can we talk about them first?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is each year we vote on the Cass County Kids First priorities. This is established by the group that's made up of board members and superintendents from the various Cass County schools, and very standard and typical what we've had in the past. Emphasis on, of course, funding, concerns over school choice, in particular with the MOCAP, with the virtual schools. You see that's kind of moved to the top, and it's funny that that's in there because today in the state school board meeting, there was discussion about MOCAP and those types of things. So I think we're seeing a lot of concern that will be expressed, and that'd be interesting on the legislative front what will happen with virtual school. But local control is always emphasized. It's a local group, so but that's pretty much it. I think the big change is the school choice concerns and trying to deal with that MOCAP provisions. So
Okay, we need a motion.
A motion to approve the Cass County Kids First legislative priorities as presented.
Second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Strategic plan update.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of combine the next two items, the strategic plan update and the construction manager update, because they kind of blend a little bit. On the strategic plan update, I'll talk about instruction just a little bit. So today, Bing and I were on a call with Cass County Economic Development. We heard from the Real World Learning Kauffman Foundation, and I had the chance to present a little bit about where we are at. Belton and Ray-Pec are in the first group. We're in group 3, so we're kind of in the beginning stages of that. But a big part of our conversation, and I'm on a weekly call with Kauffman Foundation with different aspects, is about they call them different things: soft skills, employability skills, those type of things. But I thought that was pretty interesting because I went into a classroom today where and it was construction kids in the Career Center, and they were in an English class because it's embedded credit, so they were doing their English lesson, and it was about writing an email. And I thought it was entertaining because for us, really, it's part of our daily lives to write emails. But for students, you think about it, they communicate completely different than what we do. They communicate with Snapchat and Instagram and texting and different things. And so for them to understand how the proper business approach to an email, I thought was pretty interesting. And so even last week in one of those seminars with the Real World Learning Network, we had 2 young professionals in businesses, and actually they're in, I think the emphasis was advanced manufacturing. And they were talking about the soft skills. And they call it, it's an executive function or executive skills. And it's just something that they feel like, and we're hearing more of an emphasis on those things. In fact, they even stated the company will teach them the technical skills, which we can give them a base foundation for, but it's those I like the term employability skills, because that's really what it is, and for kids to understand it. And I really know that they don't. I look at my two youngest kids who are both in high school, and even teaching them how to do an email that's just one example of an employability skill. So how to address people and those type of things, whether it's in person or electronically. So and so that's one of our areas of focus, is try to address that real world learning and how we get what's called a market value asset for all of our students by the time they graduate. And a market value asset can be really one of a multitude of things. So dual credit classes, for example, and I've talked about this before, but dual credit classes, which are something that we offer, but to be considered a market value asset, something that's an employable skill, you want it to be 9 credit hours. So they've identified this 9 credit hours in a specific targeted employment area. So that would be for your college-bound students. Some students aren't. They're just ready to go out in the workforce. So how do we prepare them for the workforce? So they talk about IRCs, industry recognized credentials, and so a lot of these things we see predominantly at the Cass Career Center. And so it's how do we get those type of assets and expand them to other areas of not only our district but the county as a whole. And so we try to narrow that down, of course, to our focus in our district. So it was a good meeting, and really focused on things that we're talking about. So data teams are a point of emphasis with our elementary groups. We've been working diligently trying to establish it's called MTSS, multi-tier system of support. And so it's having those weekly meetings where the teachers look at data and how they can identify skills that students need help with, and then putting them in a specific remediation area so that they can work on those specific skills. So for an example, if a student is struggling in reading, at one point in education, I think we would have just said, okay, these students struggle with reading, we're going to stick them in that group over there. Well, there's a lot of skills that go into reading. So phonemic awareness and comprehension are 2 examples. So you would not want to group a kid who struggles with phonemic awareness and one who struggles with comprehension in the same group. Those are different skills that are identified with their concern for reading. So it's breaking those skills down, putting kids in appropriate areas for that remediation. And so really looking at the data, we're focusing on looking at what data we look at, and identifying those specific skills, and then how we can get kids moving further along. So, and so you might have heard that identified. It's called MTSS. In some places it's called RTI, response to intervention. That's what RTI stands for. So it's all about interventions for students and helping them progress, helping with those skill gaps. So at the secondary level, we're focusing a lot with our building administrators on how do we know when students get it, per se. So, and a lot of this goes back to the PLC model, Professional Learning Communities, and Rick DeFore, who really was kind of the guru of PLCs, and with essential driving questions. The first question is, what do we want kids to know? And we feel like we've got a really strong handle on that. What do we want kids to know through identifying essential standards? Well, the second phase is, how do we know whether they got it? So that's really kind of where we're focusing our instructional secondary areas right now. So that's the instruction piece of strategic planning, and I'll kind of transition into where we're at with the middle school, and this is kind of the physical plant area. So the middle school is currently undergoing some remodeling. As you know, we have the students on virtual for 2 more weeks until the first week in November. So, as with any remodeling project, you're going to find things that you hadn't anticipated. So today I talked to Brandon Stanley, who's the project manager. He said they've identified 13 fittings that are bad. And a fitting is, so what you have is you have these pipes, these HVAC pipes that run from the boiler system or the chiller system down the hallway in the ceiling. They're steel pipes. They're the big pipes. Off of that steel pipe going into the classroom, you have the lateral lines, which are copper. So the fitting and the transition between that steel and that copper, 13 of those is causing a leak. And so that's probably what led to the condensation and those things.
Has the copper deteriorated?
No.
No.
But the fittings have.
Okay.
And so they have to replace, the plumbers have been coming in and replacing those fittings. The concern that Brandon expressed to me, and I share this concern if you had any experience with plumbing. So what they do is they take the system down, they drain the system, and then they replace the fittings, and then they pressurize the system again. Well, when you're plumbing at home, the same thing, right? You shut your hot water heater down, you drain your system. When you turn it back on, it drives air hammer through, or pressure, and so it could cause those fittings to additional fittings, not the replaced fittings, but additional fittings to then leak. So it's just a concern that we have to be aware of. It may be more, and so we'll ask our teachers to identify if there's leaks throughout after it's fixed, because what's going to happen is, and I appreciate him telling us this, because people are going to go in there and there may be a leak or two, and they're going to see the water in the ceiling, the tiles, and they're going to be frustrated, and we are going to be frustrated, but it's an old system and it's an old building, so that's the cause of that, and they'll go back and fix it as on the spot, fix those as needed.
Had fixed a couple of those already.
Right.
I mean, the thing is too, it's going to be a while before we see that leak,
Yep.
because you're going to have brand new insulation soaking all that up, and so until the insulation is saturated, you usually don't see it. That's a concern with those.
Yep. And so another concern that they've identified is going from the first floor to the second floor. So going from the first floor to the second floor, you've got pipes that come up through the floor. Well, the problem is those pipes are too close together. And so when the insulator identified these problems, when you go to insulate them, you can't properly insulate the two because they're too close together. And so the only way to fix that is to replumb those areas. And it's not a lot of areas, but they do need to be replumbed. We don't have time to do that in this month. So I asked Brandon when we could do that. He thought Christmas would be the time to do that. The thing is, you're not going to have condensation now because it's boiler system that's running. It's not the cooling system. So they don't have the concern about that right now, but it has to be done before spring. So that's the optimum time to go and replumb those old lines. And he said, honestly, that's probably what caused the leaks anyways, or the deterioration of the insulation, was that they couldn't properly install the insulation the first time back in the early 90s. So to remediate that situation, they're going to have to plumb those second floor lateral lines that come up. So.
Paul,
Yes,
is there a
ma'am.
fitting, like, how many fittings are you talking for that building? A lot?
Yes. You got that lateral line that comes down. Each time there's a classroom, there's a fitting.
So there's a fitting,
Yeah.
and that's the ones that
Yeah.
are being replaced.
Yeah, and so you got a classroom on each side. You got a fitting to this classroom. Each
Mhm.
classroom has its own fitting.
Is that the dielectric?
Yeah.
Dielectric.
Yeah. So, and Jason's right. We've identified those all along too. So,
But we didn't find them until water was
Yeah.
dripping in the ceiling tile.
How long does it take for the water to drip into the ceiling tile? A couple of years?
Can't they put some
Depends on how
sensors?
fast.
Can't they put some sensors or something on them?
It's a good question. I can ask him that.
Because it seems silly not to know if something's
Right.
leaking.
Or could they physically go in 3-4 weeks, a month, 2 months and check it to see
Well,
if
you'd have
the
to take the
insulation?
insulation
Yeah,
off.
take the insulation off.
Off of each fitting, you'd have to take the insulation off.
There should be some manner of observing, I would think, but I don't know.
Okay, I'll check on that, Nancy. So, included in your packet are some schematics for the CCC. Just an example of let's see, that's on the construction manager update. So if you want to pull that up, you can see two options that we've kind of boiled it down to for pricing. Just so this will go to, this is from the architects, this is from the design team, and this is from our meetings that we've had each week on Thursdays with Jeanette and Ann and Jason and I and the design team, and just identifying areas.
Two options. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we really like option 2 probably the best. Our concern with option 2 was probably the pricing, because it involves two additions. You got an ag classroom addition, and then an HVAC addition on I think that's the northwest side of the building. So
Both of them, I added that up today when I looked at it a little bit, Paul. I think it's 12 to 1,300 square feet more additional space on
Right.
option 2 than option 1.
So that's going to be, they wanted to price out two different options and see, that is the ultimate goal anyways. What we liked about option 2 was the fact that it kept the ag all together, particularly with the greenhouse. So if you look at option 1, you're going to have the HVAC shop and classroom separating the greenhouse from the ag. So that's one thing that we would prefer on that. So, but probably if we do option 2, that's going to be a phased approach. So our goal is ultimately, if we can add an additional program, to be able to do that at the CCC. You can see on the fire, that's a considerable reconstruction on the fire area to make that shop bigger. That's a really small shop right now in the classroom, so that's to expand that and put a roof over that alleyway right there and put the fire truck in there. Considerable remodeling in the welding shop. That's where we have some of our concerns with water. We're short on welders and some other issues. And then some, you can see secure entries established in the office space. You've got the addition on the south east part of the building that's with the grant money for the nursing program. That's separate from the bond, but so those are and then you've got the greenhouse. And just to let you know a couple things, so you've got a lot of grant work here too. You got the grant for the nursing program. You've got in the welding shop, the welders themselves, the welding booths, you would be able to get some grants that would be some matching grants, either FV4 or enhancement grants, one of the two. And it's either, depending on which type of grant it is, it's either 50% matching or 75% paid, and then 25% from the district. So, and then the greenhouse is also grant eligible. So, those are some good programs that we feel like we can use, intermix the bond money with the grant money and get more bang for our buck out of those type of deals. So that's just an example of what the design team is working on now. So the next phase is that goes to Newkirk and Novak, and they'll develop GMP, and we'll see what we can afford. So, and we haven't got this far with the other design team yet, but when we do, I'll be glad to share that with you too. And I think I can talk just a little bit about the middle school ECC. A large focus on playground accessibility for students with disabilities, parking, trying to rework that parking and not have the buses drive through a playground would be greatly beneficial. So we've identified kind of how that can go. So we'll see that as soon as they give us some plans. We'll share that. Of course, a warming kitchen addition on ECC, and then middle school, looking at how we can expand that cafeteria, take out where the counselors currently are, and moving that into a classroom on the other side of the vestibule. So just some different things you'll see on those.
On the ECC, Paul, too, just mention potentially instead of the warming kitchen, there could be some office expansion tied into that front, and the warming kitchen would be renovated space within then. Instead of adding, you see what I'm saying? Since we're adding on the front, needing to make a secure entrance, maybe the dollars would be better spent in some office space there and move the warming kitchen into the office on the interior, so there's lots of different ideas and plans there that they're looking at. But that would make the front where the new stuff is versus building new on the side or back where nobody kind of sees it. So just one of the things that we're looking at.
All right, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
Very much. Any questions or comments?
What's the time frame for once it's turned over to?
So then I think they had wanted to start bidding in January. So once this goes to them, I think somewhere in the next couple of months they're going to do their recruiting fair, I guess, of local bidders and all bidders and invited bidders, and then kind of see what areas they can offer, and then that'll help them with that GMP too. So I think their intent is to start with construction in the spring. I just don't know how early.
You're talking at CCC?
Yeah.
Okay.
The nursing addition, because the grant timeline has to be done first, so that'll be the first thing that they really hit. So
that makes sense.
All right. If there is nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody.